Welcome, you watch Better Developer channel. My name is Dima. I'm here developing a hopefully popular website for musicians. And finally I go to the front end. I know that you are here for hard skills, but without explanation my approach raises many questions and I still have to answer them. I really wanted to add some hard tips to the video, some code and etc. But it turned out to be too long and I know it will get a lot of dislikes. So I'm afraid it will hide hard skills tips from someone who needs them. So today you listen podcast, sorry about this, and I really try to make next video more technically and more for your hard skills. I have to notice, sorry, Russia is a terrorist state, Russians tried to kill me, tried to kill everyone who I loved, who I know, and try to destroy everything what they see. They already ruins their lives and now they want to ruin the lives of others. So please support Ukraine. And I will start with the depreciation of front-end development. Historically, front-end development is not respected. You will always hear that JavaScript is a bad programming language and anyone can write whatever they want in it without any styles, patterns and etc. Untapped for CSS, markups, HTML, all the more. That's why most projects on the front-end are very dirty and smell very bad. Front-end tests are rare, not because there are no technology, but because tech leads simply makes a small estimate for task for the front-end. In the heads of other non-front-end developers, I quote, move pixels on the screen. But you should know the modern front-end is very difficult. It is very difficult to write a front-end that is easy to support. So if you are the one who spend your life commenting that JavaScript is bad programming language, this is pointless because your good programming language does not work in the browsers. This if we are talking about the front-end. If it's about backend, then I'm on your side, but for various reasons. You can say, dude, you're asking us to respect bad developers who make bad projects. No, I'm asking you to take the front-end more seriously. Here is historical reference how such developers, bad front-end developers, multiplied. Imagine an ordinary outsource office 10 or 15 years ago. Example, we have a company of Java developers. They work all fine, but here the demand for a single-page application project will appear on the market. Customers and the market say that you need a single-page application developer, front-end developer. Of course, the best Java developer took it upon himself and start making cool front-end projects. Of course not. Remember moving pixels. So the worst Java developer is appointed to the front-end as a punishment. This developer or developers was not strong anyway, and here he should study a new technology, and usually without review, because moving pixels. This developer somehow make a project just work without best practice, maybe without even understanding, and it burns out in 2 years because it became impossible to support the project and there is no one to blame, and someone is put in his place from company as punishment, or hire some newbies or some cheaper developer because moving pixels, and these new developers burn out even faster because that bad developer at least knew his code, but new guys don't know the code and they are rated as worse than the worst. So new guys switch a job, go to another job and see the same things there. Do while they become to terms and believe themselves that the front end is shit code, so they don't even try to change something anymore. The same story with Node.js. Node.js as punishment. Of course, there are many exceptions. There are good developers, there are good projects, there are many good projects with good developers. But I want to try to break the endless spiral with my speech. Bad developers made a bad project made a bad developers. For conclusion, front-end is important, front-end is complex, front-end is difficult. Looking at the front-end world, evaluate your project. So we raise the salary of the best developer and ask him to take responsibility for front-end, or we hire good front-enders for good money. Now I can talk about technology for my project. I will start with the JavaScript framework. If you are still joking about that every 5 minutes there are release of new JavaScript framework, please just try to remember some new JavaScript framework. This joke was relevant 5 years ago. Actual frameworks have survived primordial JavaScript soup. So if the framework still get an updates, it will continue to live. In my head, the choice comes down to 3 frameworks: Angular, React, and Vue.js. So, subjective opinion about React. First of all, no matter what you think, no matter what is written, React is a framework. React as a library does not pass the DAG test. Everyone use React as a framework. Everyone talk about framework when say React, and I haven't actually seen zero live example where React was included as library. So my last experience with React was 3 years ago. At that time there was a huge selection of routing modules, pilot components, CSS files or something else. There was a big mess between functional or classes components, data binding implemented by each developers in his own way. Now, as I can see, Next.js is popular, and I really hope Next.js makes some standard modules, standard components, and standard approaches for React developers. I have experience with 3 or 4 React projects, and each project was as unique as possible, not by functionality, but as a set of approaches and dependencies. And this effect in React project occurs for the same reason as I say frontend as punishment. As punishment, no one do some analysis, some research, they just take the most popular framework, first one in Google if you want. So React is a good framework with a very large number of very different developers, and if you beginner, you have more chances to find work on React. And if you are product owner, you have more chances to hire a React developer. But React is not my choice. Next, let's talk about Angular. Usually Angular project has a much cleaner code. Not because there is a Zionist conspiracy over the React framework, but because we've positioned it as a framework from the very beginning, from scratch. And because Angular is very loved by .NET developers. .NET developers understand the syntax and approaches, and Angular is not punishment for them. It's usually another point in the CV of the senior .NET developer, most likely takes the responsible for frontend to themselves. Also, you should know there is a big iceberg of knowledge about Angular. Angular is easy to learn and very hard to master. Most often Angular project came to me for troubleshooting with optimization problems, and in the absolute majority, first of all, I switch the change detection strategy to push or on push, sorry, don't remember, and that was usually enough, but this knowledge was directly sacred. Ordinary developers did not get to them. But the biggest problem with Angular is that it is poorly indexed by Google, and this is a paradox because Google develops Angular. But guys, my experience with Angular ends even before my experience with React, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Of course, I could be wrong, and please recheck anything what I say. And my favorite, the winner for today, is Vue.js with Nuxt. But first, let's talk about Vue. Ask why Vue.js? First of all, Vue.js is easy to learn, easy to master. So probably it is easy to find a developer on Vue.js or switch some developer from some another front-end technology. For me, since I have a Laravel on backend, it will be much easier for me to find a full-stack developer for Laravel with Vue.js skills. This combination works the same way as Angular and .NET. Do Vue.js have a cons? Of course, we have a mix with Vue 2nd version and Vue 3 version. Or 4. We have to choose use composition API or optional API. Also, we have to choose use TypeScript or not. And this choice itself creates a potential mess in projects. You can see, man, you just a minute ago say about React the same problems. But maybe it is survival bias. But I having many projects on the Vue, and they always stick to the stack chosen from the beginning. Unlike on React. On React project, I always see a mess with technology packages, approaches, and etc. Half of project on pure JavaScript and half of project on TypeScript. Easy for React. Use 2 or many routing packages, easy. But on Vue project, I don't see this at all. And I know why React project have so mess, because frontend as punishment. Yes, the main reason why I use Vue is that I subjectively like it. I started getting familiar with Vue on version 2, and this was the first documentation with best practices in my life. Documentation do not say we can this or this or this, use this all shit in one component please. Documentation say use this in this case, and life will get better. And in fact, to make a bad Vue project you had to try. You should have found a difficult problem, keep Google and Stack Overflow, skip all documentation and make your own solution, which is actually very difficult and it was not accepted in the community. So most likely the Vue project will have 2 or 3 search self-made solutions, which can be refactored in 2 or 3 weeks. But go next. If you try to start project on Vue, you have a choice. Use optional API or composition API. And let's be honest, there is nothing wrong with optional API. Yes, composition allow us to reuse code, but not all code. All code we can reuse using simple JavaScript services without any problem. We have problem with reactive code and with code who needs some dependency from some global plugins and etc. from config. And in fact, we don't need it that often. I developed complex large project with optional API on Vue 2 with only a dozen mixins. So please don't panic if you get a project with optional API. It is work cool without any problem, believe me. But if you start project from scratch, I strongly recommend you to use composition API. I believe this branch would develop best, and most importantly, it will give you an advantages in a job market. You can easily switch to React after composition API, or you will not have problem with switching to optional API if you need it. And personal note, soft skill are important. And if you start with a team that has a static stack of technologies or approaches, please don't open them with this stack. Use it or make some improvements. For proposition, the phrase "it sucks because there is something new" will not change anything in the project and will make you look like a fool. Make some improvements. Guys, let's use this. It can help us with this, and I need 1 to 3 weeks for a refactor. This is much better. And if you hear and don't understand what the difference between composition API and optional API, it's easy. In optional API we use some big object or class with specific property names where we describe all our business logic, component logic. In composition API we write inline JavaScript code or Typescript, no matter, and we combine our code with specific classes or object. Optional API have a problem with code reusing. Composition API have a problem with code style because we can describe some reactive variable from scratch, out start, on top, in the middle of code, for example. But it is not a problem when you write small, simple components. And few words about TypeScript. First of all, you should know TypeScript don't handle all your problems. TypeScript make code readable, a little cleaner, and it prevents some errors on the stage of writing code or on build. That's all. And of course, you should know JavaScript before TypeScript. And vanilla JavaScript is your core, your base skill. So if you have complexes about the fact that you are not developing on TypeScript, keep calm. You're still a good developer, and relatively easy you can switch to TypeScript. Just in case if you still looking on CoffeeScript, please stop. CoffeeScript is dead. I will develop my project on TypeScript. I haven't worked on it for a long time, therefore I will have to update my knowledge. One thing, while preparing the video, I come across the advice to check the type of arguments every time, because TypeScript is converted into JavaScript. JavaScript does not check the type, and we can get integer when expected string, for example from API call. Please don't do that. It is really shitty code, empty job. If you want, better spend time and write a test. In most cases, if you get int instead of string, it will not affect to your code in any way. Of course, there is an exception, but please do not overcheck types. And maybe last for JavaScript for today, you should know Ecmascript standard. You will be asked about this in interview again and again. The fact is the newcomers often study or work on outdated projects without syntax sugar, and Ecmascript change the code a lot. Therefore, you should not be afraid of destructuring spreads, arrow function, and etc. So please read about Ecmascript starting from version 6. And for today, one more thing about frameworks. If you read about performance of frameworks, something that we can render 1,000,001 components per second, you should know all actual frameworks has good performance. Also, you should know that in regular cases you don't have 1,000,001 components. And also you should know that in most of cases you have limits on a device where you load this JavaScript on client device. So on stage, when you select framework for your project, please think, do you really need over optimization? And yeah, performance is important, optimization is important, but you as developer should write optimized code. Frameworks has almost equal performance. Also we should talk about Nuxt.js. If you don't know, Nuxt.js is a framework based on Vue.js. It has many features and positive points, but the main feature is server-side rendering. And I want to talk about this. I read and watch a lot of materials about web development, and the absolute majority of articles about server-side rendering begin with the thesis: server-side rendering is needed for speed optimization, web application optimization speed. And this is a bullshit. Single-page application was created and get popularity because they are optimized as much as possible. Simple idea: once time client load a JavaScript application, and then it takes all rendering work on itself, on client device, on client resources, and get from server only small teeny JSON data, not big HTML file, but small teeny JSON, and render only changes, not all page, but only changes, some model window, some new page content, and etc. You can say, okay, Dima, you are a stupid man, just read Nuxt documentation. Right here you can read about optimization, performance, and yes, it is really written here. But why you did miss the big block on the top about universal rendering, default rendering mode, and universal rendering say, first page we render on the server side, next we iterate this page on client side, and after that user work with single page application. We do not render any other pages. If server-side rendering is about performance, why don't we render other pages on the server side? Like for example on Blades or Twig if you use Symfony or many template engines. I know answer, because we need server-side rendering only for SEO. We use server-side rendering and they exist only like workaround for SEO optimization single page applications. That's why we should deploy server-side rendering application. We should think what we should render on the server, what we should render on the client. Make a lot of work. But if we use a simple single page application, we can build it and send to CDN only static files. But with server-side rendering we should do some tricks. Think about optimization, think about IGA server-side rendering, and etc. But okay, go to, for example, Google. Google tell us that it has no problem with single page application indexing. And I can confirm it is true. Google can index single page applications. But also Google have crawler limit. The limit is some number of resources that Google can spend for indexing your domain at a time. You can read that crawler limit is count of page that Google can indexing, but this is not an exact definition. This is exactly the amount of server resources that Google provide for your domain. That's why I have a video about SEO plug for my web project domain. I want to increase crawler limit. And yeah, if you have some very popular domain like Reddit, I believe you can simply use a single page application and Google give you all resources in the world. But if you have a new domain, not popular domain, you are very interested in increasing of crawler limits. That's why we use a server-side rendering. We spend our resources for page rendering without wasting Google resources. And that's why you should think about server-side rendering when you develop some SEO-friendly web application. But if you don't need SEO, I can recommend you to use Nuxt too, because Nuxt have many useful features and utilities. And now I want to talk about makeup, about styling, about CSS. First, tell me, does your project depends on the appearance? Do you have a designer in your team? How often does the customer talk about appearance of your project? I ask this question for a reason. I need to know whether to recommend you to use ready-made UI libraries or not. I'm talking about out-of-the-box solutions like Bootstrap, Vuetify, Bazaar, or something else except Tailwind. I will talk about Tailwind at the end of this video, and I know what I'm getting a lot of dislikes, but I won't lie for likes. So if you write some standard project, shop, blog, and your customer does not want to some specific design, or you make some enterprise project, some admin panel, feel free to use any UI libraries what you want. On the other side, please think, do you really need this UI library? Why this is important? Because I very often see projects where developers suffer by bringing UI lib to design, starting with many codes with important inside style sheets, finishing with edits in JavaScript. Usually it is happens because you start with MVP. Product owner or project manager force you to use some UI lib for faster developing. You write some functionality, many functionality, and someday they say, okay, cool, now we want beautiful redesign, and you start fight with UI lib, writing important styles, and in some step you start writing JavaScript fixes. Wait until some component will mount and add dynamic styles. And I see this situation too often. I have actually seen and work good projects where search code took up more spaces than business logic code. And yes, this code generated 90% of bugs. But if you have a problem with writing CSS, writing styles, of course you should take UI lib, but be ready for painful redesign. Or talk with your customers and hire some makeup CSS developer if you want. A little blog about personal experience. For a very long time I was afraid to write some styles, but then came flex boxes and grid boxes. The CSS preprocessor appeared and gained popularity, and Internet Explorer died. All web developers celebrated this day. The next search holiday will be when the Safari dies. So I make layout by myself. I won't show you how to make layout in the way so that you are not afraid of redesign. I have experience with that. I have even experience when I fully redesigned project by one night because the customer really needed it. But you have one more option. Buy some ready-made layout, some template. But hear me please, before you buy something. The problem with buying templates is that you don't know what you are buying. Yes, you have a perfect demo, but you don't know what's code inside this demo. Will this code work anywhere else besides this demo? And most importantly, you usually have no option to give feedback or return this template. I was inspired by a template I bought about 8 years ago. Unfortunately, the link no longer works, and if I found it, you can see it on the screen. And this was a really well written template at that time. Since then, I have come across 3 more templates, and they were terrible. They were bought by customers with phrase implement it quickly, but it was impossible to implement them quickly. It was difficult to implement them at all. Code duplication, most of code is commented. A very strange set of dependency, totally dirty, with some specific authorization libs, code duplication, some old builders like Gulp. I remember the last search case very well. It was template for Vuetify, bought in official Vuetify store, and there I realized that the template developers are fighting with the template, like a regular developer who wants to redesign the template. And then it took a long time to demonstrate this code to the customer and explain what's wrong. And yeah, my first experience was very successful. It was a great project with actual technology on that time. Unless I remember, but no matter. So it's your solution, but you should know that search cases exists. Now let's talk about designers. And I know you hate designers because they create work for you, they create challenge for you. But my personal experience of working with designers is absolutely positive. They really offered cool ideas that I like. each of them, but I still have a few complaints identical to each the designers I work with. The first claim also applies to the purchase of templates. They never show or draw negative cases. Let me explain, please. When you open some design or some demo of templates, you always see beautiful graphs, some statistic data, tables, and etc. and etc. But what if we don't have this data? What if we have a brand new user and it is nothing to show in this chart, in these graphs or this table? I'm talking not about errors in API service. I'm talking real about empty database. And I understand that empty fields cannot be sold to the customer. That's why they are not drawn. But they must be developed and we must know how does it should look. And I had to talk to each designer again and again, please write negative cases. So go to the next problem. I'm talking about UI kit. UI kit without standards. What I say in my future video, you will see how do I work with variable inside CSS. A good project has a limited number of variables. I'm talking about colors, sizes, spaces, and etc. And usually designer create a UI kit page. This page with all standard colors, sizes, and elements, UI elements, and it is very useful. Developer creates limited set of variables and don't have to think about it. Don't use a ruler in Figma, but designers very often violate these standards. Plus 5 pixels of indentation for some unique element is not problem for them, but it is problem for developers, because we need to create some new variable, add some abstract but understandable name, and over think do we should use this variable or another, and usually I give a comma. We use this set of variables and it doesn't matter what is in design. If you get some new size, just get similar. But this causes many conflict with the QA team, because the design is the standard for the QA team. And over I need to spend my time for negotiation with designer and with QA team. And the last claim to the designers. Let's call it shades of white. I have a good eyesight, a really good eyesight, and I use good monitors. Dell's with IPS matrix or Samsung with IR matrix. Of course it is not MacBook, but it is good monitors with good matrix. And I very often do not see shades of white which designers add to design document. And logic say if I don't see them, so people with worse eyesight and or with worse monitor display definitely don't see them. But designers usually say I see, so everyone sees. Sorry, I had to say this somewhere. But go next. Next I have a simple question to community. Is someone use still Gulp or Grunt? I'm trying to explain. 10 or 11 years ago, when I started working as a web developer, question what to use Gulp or Grunt was actual, but maybe half of years and Webpack was released. After that, I see only Webpack projects. Until white, of course. But even now, again and again, I come across comments that someone has set up a Grunt or Gulp, or argues that Gulp is better than Grunt. This is at the time when white is already killed Webpack. It is very strange. If you play in Civilization, you know the situation when the warrior on the horse try to kill a tank or some future cyborg. This is very strange to me, and I want to ask you. If you use white, and I'm going to use white. And now it's time to press a dislike button, because I'm going to talk about Tailwind CSS, and I really hate this technology. Guys, I really try to find why you use Tailwind. I watch a lot of videos, I ask ChatGPT, and I did not find any normal argument. Okay, I believe I need to explain what Tailwind do. Tailwind is a set of classes. Each class contains only one property with value, and developers should write set of these classes inside class in some element. Yes, this long string. And if you haven't guessed yet, then I will tell you what it reminds me of. Yes, inline CSS code. Okay, inline and inline, what's the problem? Let's see why we don't use inline CSS code. Why all linters rule set disallow use inline CSS code? I think I got an answer. because it is impossible to support inline CSS. It is impossible to find some element, some component when you have only over and over a repeated string. I don't know, background color red or bag red and some number. And yeah, support is the main reason why we don't use inline CSS. Okay, maybe not mine. Mine is reusing code, but now we're talking about modern component web development, so this reason is on the second plane. And yeah, I can find another reason why we don't use inline CSS, but the mine is support. And okay, I believe someone think I am some accessibility master. All my element has a unique role, so I can use Tailwind and my code was supported. But first of all, I don't believe you. It is very hard to believe that people who use Tailwind think about accessibility, sorry. But you can write a comment. But still, let's go through the point that Tailwind followers call positive. First of all, fast development. Very quick development. I think you can write a little faster than when you write inline CSS, because inline CSS have so specific symbol and a little bit bigger. But you can say, no, this is not inline code, we have media prefixes, we can write from mobile, tablet and etc. Also prefix with hover, focus edge and etc. Okay, you win a little better than inline code. Maybe because nobody develop inline code. Maybe we have a reason for this, but no, we have no reason why browser developers, browser engine developers skip support of inline code. We have no any reason. But go back to quick development. But guys, development is cheaper, support is expensive. But okay, let's say I can find components by some I don't know role. But what if I want to redesign? What if I say gray is bad color for my company, I want purple? And here Tailwind adepts say that's why we have a classes, you can change color inside class. But please tell me the truth, please. You really think it is okay when class with name bag gray 50 will set background color to purple? Really, it is okay for you? Best support practice. Okay, I think I understand your quick development logic. You make a very quick project, take a money and ignore the customer for the rest of your life. And yeah, it looks like business idea, I understand this. Don't accept, but understand. But go to next positive point. I really like this point. I really like this message. You don't need to think about unique class names. Wow, guys, what I say in the previous video, forget please about domain name and etc. New perfect approach. But I want to expand on this approach. New rule, all variables should contain only one letter and number in alphabetic order. A1, A2, before B6. But no, don't stop, please go next. All functions should start with F character and number, F1, F2 and etc. The same logic, guys. We don't need to think about unique name. Perfect. Also we have components name. Let's say uppercase, one letter and one number. Guys, I hope you understand me, but go to the next point. What I hear, you can copy some component from one Tailwind project to another and it will work and look the same. But what happens when we copy some inline CSS component or maybe component with a class? Okay, I believe existing case when we should not support this component when we move from one project to another. In case where class BGGray15 make background color purple. Really a good point. So I noticed all adepts of Tailwind immediately begin to make excuse for the length of the class. And no, I don't scare some long attribute. It is bad, but okay. This logic I should feel a fear when I open SVG icon. But you know what really scares me? This is the fact when I use Tailwind and want change something, global change border color. I did force update all components when I have border colors, make a biggest merge requests and watch how the team aged before your eyes solving git conflicts. But Tailwind adepts know the solutions. They invented stylish components. These components when you can build or maybe collect some class and reuse it, some components and reuse it, but in fact it is a class, but contains not CSS properties, but Tailwind classes. Yes, they reinvented classes. Yes, Tailwind followed the same evolutionary path as CSS. What I can add? History is cyclical. And the biggest joke that all Tailwind adapts know CSS. We're talking not about history, I don't know CSS, so I use Beautify. All Tailwind classes is alias for CSS properties, and all of them contain value. So yes, they can write pure CSS classes. And what else I not? In the discussion about Tailwind, they say we have no any alternatives. Block element modifier methodology is bad, SMA CSS is bad, and all methodology is bad. First of all, we talk about component-based methodology. From block element modifier, I get only naming and not strict rules, because all my code is isolated inside components. All my style is isolated inside components, in most of cases, of course. So we talk not about methodology, we talk just about simple naming recommendations. Okay, I believe you just listen to the video with the most dislikes count on the channel. I really try to do next video more technically, more about hard skills, and no matter of what, please support Ukraine and thank you.